My name is Meghan and I am one of the representatives who is going to present to you tonight on this student experience abroad. I represent London Metropolitan University in the UK, and I am joined by colleagues in the international university field who are from universities in the UK, Ireland, France, and Switzerland tonight. And all of us are members of AIRR-NA, which is a unique network of representatives who work for international universities, but we're all based within the United States. So we work specifically with US applicants, counselors, parents, prospective students. And so we're at college fairs around the country when we can. Obviously, 2020 has been a little bit of a different year, so it's been virtual, which is why we're really grateful you joined us tonight. And our goal for this session is really to give you an overview of what it looks like to actually attend college or grad school overseas. So doing your full degree in another country outside, and how that compares and differs from studying on a US campus. So you're welcome to ask questions throughout the session in the chat box, and we will do a Q&A at the end. And you can send us a private message if you have a question for one of us individually, or you can put a public question in the chat box and we at the end. So quickly, we're just going to run through some introductions so you know who's presenting to you tonight and how you can get in touch with us. Again, I said my name is Meghan and I work for London Metropolitan University, which is located in central London in the UK. I actually went to grad school in London myself and ended up doing the post-study work visa there. So I lived in London for about 7 years, which is why I love working with applicants from the US on the transition for going overseas and studying there and potentially even living and working there later on. I am based in Connecticut, and I have a colleague who is based in California to represent London Met. And now I will pass it over to Harry.
Hello everyone, my name is Harry. I represent Franklin University in Lugano, Switzerland. I didn't have a chance to study abroad until my master's degree, but did so in the UK, and it really opened my eyes to lots of the wonderful opportunities that students get to have when literally traveling the world and experiencing new cultures and places, and that got me interested in looking into different positions for international institutions. So I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I'm based in Denver, Colorado. My two other major colleagues who review applications for Franklin in the US are based in LA and Raleigh, North Carolina. And so we've got a little team here to help you all out with any questions you might have.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriela Mendez. I represent Middlesex University, and I was a student at Middlesex not too long ago as well. I also did my master's there, and I'm currently based in New York, but I was a Latin American student who had just gone out of the university, and I earned a full scholarship to study virtually anywhere in the world, and I chose the United Kingdom for many reasons, but it really opened up my eyes to the world. And I can honestly say it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever taken in my life. And not only that decision, but the doors that have opened afterwards have been incredible. So I'm a very big believer, very big advocate in British education, but in an international experience overall. So you can contact me at g.mendez@mdx.ac.uk if you have any personal questions or Middlesex related questions. But I hope that this session will be useful to you if you know nothing about studying abroad, if you have very little knowledge of it. We're here to help, so please ask your questions.
Great. On to Julie.
Bonjour, y'all. Yes, I am Julie Sappington. I work for the American University of Paris. I'm based in Savannah, Georgia, and I am originally a Southerner. That's where the y'all comes from. I have studied in France. I did a year abroad in Lyon, France. After I graduated, I went on to work in Paris as an English assistant. And I've worked at the American University of Paris for 8 years. And so I've got a lot of experience under my belt in the world of international education and love living abroad, love spending that time abroad. It definitely changes your whole perspective on life and where you're going to go with it. In the United States, we have 4 admissions represented based in the different corners of the United States. We have somebody in California, somebody in Pittsburgh, we have me in Savannah, Georgia, and then we have a colleague in Chicago to answer your questions no matter what part of the United States you're in. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Merci. And on to Bridie.
Hey, thanks, Julie. My name is Bridie Troy, and I'm with University College Dublin, also called UCD. And I also studied abroad in Ireland for both my undergraduate and my graduate degrees, so can't get enough, kept going back. And like everyone here, I think it's really great that I can offer you both an admissions perspective, but also a former study abroad student perspective. So yeah, reach out to any of us if you want to know more about the student experience, because we've all been there. I'm based in Chicago, but UCD has a North American team set up across the country from New York to San Diego. So you can reach out to me and I can connect you with your regional representative.
Great, thanks everyone. So now we're gonna kind of get into the meat of our presentation, and I did want to plug as well that this is our second to last AIRR-NA Wednesday webinar for the year. We have one more coming up in December, and then we'll be continuing them in 2021. But this one again is focused on the experience of studying your full degree abroad. So I wanted to open with just kind of the topic of it. Why study your full degree abroad coming from the United States? It might not be something that your peers at US high schools are considering, might not be something you've heard of a lot of people doing for undergraduate or grad school. It is less culturally common for US students to consider. The more popular model for study abroad from the United States right now is still doing a short-term semester study through a four-year institution in the US, but doing a full degree overseas is actually becoming more and more common for US students, which is really neat to see. All of us who do what we do here are really excited about kind of this movement and this growth that we're seeing. And it's because there's a lot of perks for studying overseas, which will come up throughout this webinar, but some of the pros are that students can still apply for US financial aid through FAFSA. There's international student scholarships. Often the tuition and fees can be more affordable than out-of-state and private options. So a lot of pros that US students aren't always aware of. And I think the concept of doing this can often be intimidating to US students because they might not have a lot of peers who have done this. And I always tell students that actually it's a lot less intimidating than it seems. I myself am a bit of a homebody. I miss my family and being away. But really, I say if you were going to consider studying out of state, longer than say a 4-hour drive where you might be going home on the weekends, actually being that far away when you're caught up in the day-to-day life of your studies, your classes, everything that's going on socially with clubs and activities, really when you're in the heart of the semester, it doesn't feel so far from home. And particularly with the technologies we now have to be connecting with our family and friends back home, it really is a lot easier than it sounds. There's long break periods over the holidays and in the summer if you want to come back to the United States, but you will have a residence permit in whatever country you choose to study in. So some students just want to stay there, perhaps get a part-time job. So it's really up to you. But once you touch down in your international orientation, you look around the room and realize that your peers are from all over the world. And so even if it's not something you've heard of a lot of your friends at your school considering, it's really something that the rest of the world is really tapped into. And so you can really participate and be part of this movement. So quickly, in terms of when you're comparing US and international university experiences, we really wanted to give you a breakdown of what that looks like. There's a lot of things that would be the same about going to college in the United States and a lot of things that would be different in an international experience. But if the idea of going overseas is intimidating for you, just know that there's so much pre-departure support for students who are studying abroad. So normally there's regional representatives like ourselves who are based in different regions around the world. So we work on international teams that might also support students from South America, from Africa, from Asia. And so we all really specialize in our regions. We understand our applicants, the background they're coming from. We do webinars in advance. We can help on the US financial aid process and taking that overseas. We can help kind of walk you through the steps of getting your student visa from the United States to go study in another country. So you're really never in the dark. You really have support from the moment you decide to apply until you get on the airplane and touch down in your new home country. And some really fun things about being an international student is there's special programming when you're part of that group. So normally international students might even come in a little bit sooner than the domestic students from that country for different social activities and events. Arrival services, a lot of universities might even have airport transfers, and student ambassadors meet and greeting students at the airport when they've just arrived from overseas. There's customized orientations for international students, and Welcome Week, you learn about all of the clubs, societies, organizations that Julie's going to be talking about next. In the UK, at least, there's something called Freshers Week, which is a really fun experience, which is basically programming, social activities, introduction to all of the different resources on campus, clubs and organizations. So really there's all kinds of programming. It's really a fun experience, just like if you were going to a US campus. If you've toured US campuses and heard about all these neat things that are happening, the activities, the lead up, the resources, really international universities offer this as well. And it looks different based on, you know, which university you're at, but these are kind of similarities that you'll find as a theme throughout. So now I'm going to pass it over to Julie to talk about student life.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, so obviously a big part of the college experience is all the different things you get involved in. And so these are, you know, common to international universities as well. So there's student unions or student governments that help take care of whatever student activity budget might be out there, that help with the activity planning, different clubs, societies, and organizations that you can get involved in, similarly to what you might have in the United States as well. We also have sports teams at most of our universities. This may look a little bit different than some of the like big, you know, Division 1, 2, 3, whatever schools in the United States. It's not exactly the same system oftentimes, but we do often have our own sort of sports teams that you can get involved with. And then there is different media. So like, for example, at the American University of Paris, we have our own radio, TV show, or I'm sorry, radio, TV on our YouTube, and then a magazine. We put together a glossy magazine called the Peacock Plume every quarterly. So, you know, there's lots of ways of getting involved that mean that you find your community as well. And then Megan, if you could just move it on to the next slide. More great, wonderful things that you can get involved with while you're at an international university is that a lot of times there's travel that is involved. So you're always welcome to travel on your own on the weekends with friends, but then a lot of times there will be specific programming that will take you to various parts of Europe and beyond. That might be faculty-led trips. That might be, you know, just like a day trip or whatever else, but it's another great way of experiencing Europe and seeing more of the world. And because these are group trips, a lot of times there's discounts to make it cheaper and more affordable to go on these trips because they have group discounts, but also there's just so much in terms of, yeah, so like Europe does a great job of taking care of their students. So like there's student discounts to go to the cinemas or to even, you know, the opera or whatever else that might be out there, any cultural events like that. So I'm going to let our next presenter take over for the next slide.
Great, thank you so much, Julie. So one major concern that I hear from potential students is the question, will my degree be recognized back in the United States after graduation? And the answer is a resounding yes. International universities are globally ranked and accredited to provide you with a prestigious global degree. So both undergraduate and professional degrees will be accepted in the United States upon graduation. Additionally, the overseas education system promotes key advantages to undergraduates in subject specialization and focus, independent study, and critical thinking skills. So I know we touched on this in a couple previous AIRR-NA webinars, so I won't over-explain, but there are two main pathways to an education abroad. You can study direct entry, which is a highly focused degree without the general education requirements, which is really ideal for people who know exactly what they want to go through, and it's the really common European system. Or you could go through a standard American-style liberal arts four-year degree. So it's really great. You kind of have your options with these that you might not be considering even as a school outside of America. And at an international school, you will be more self-reliant with less emphasis placed on busy work and homework. instead focusing on hands-on examples and experiences. So your international education will offer you so many experiences that will translate into real-world career building after graduation. In fact, a recent report found that out of 10,000 companies contacted, more than 80% actively sought out graduates who have studied abroad. In fact, many universities offer work placement opportunities and provide many resources to help graduates search for a job in their field. So in the increasingly global world, international experience increases your employability dramatically. At international universities, you'll receive great career resources, supports, and alumni networking opportunities to help you in your postgraduate job search. So for many international institutions, such as all of us here today, we offer the internship and service learning opportunities. And most European nations allow students to work part-time while at university. And this is amazing because once you graduate, you'll have unique international work experience that you can either bring across the world or back to the United States. So you can check the AIRR-NA website for immigration and working regulations for each of our universities. Many offer post-graduation work visa opportunities, giving you the chance to live, travel, and work abroad even after graduating. And this is a really great opportunity as your alumni networks and connections will be spread throughout the world, helping you to find a job in a field that you love, no matter where you end up after getting your international education. And yeah, now Harry will tell you all about on-campus supports.
Thank you very much. I like to talk about these things because many of these types of support services are not very common in the European context, and yet they are in our institutions. So we like to provide opportunities for students to have each of these types of support services that they're so accustomed to in the US context. For example, things like academic advising, support services for other types of things that you need to be on campus, living healthy and happy lives in your time as a student abroad. So all of our institutions will have these types of support services to help students progress through their educational experiences. Additionally, as a part of these support services, we will have, if not specific offices, then individuals within the university that are specifically there to help out with students in their transition to get from, for example, the United States to one of these different countries, whether that's help with visa advising, setting up a bank account, assistance with residence permits, all of these different things that you're going to need to do in order to actually be in these places. We also have very robust onboarding procedures, things like orientation. For example, ours is a week long that helps students to basically acclimate to their new experience, being in a different country, a different culture, a different context, getting to know the area that they're going to be in, and really, instead of throwing them directly into the fire going, all right, fend for yourself, that we help them with that transition abroad.
Okay, the subject we all love to talk about, COVID-19. Obviously, that's changed our world. It's kind of turned things upside down a little bit, but the great thing about a lot of our international institutions is, you know, there is a very good response by the governments that we have. And so a lot of times what that means is the curve has been flattened in several countries. Now, I can't speak for every country when I say that. So essentially what we've been doing at all of our schools is practicing the health and safety measures that the World Health Organization, along with the local governments, provide for us. So for example, I'm representing France, so I'm going to speak very much so to the French model. But as you can see from the pictures, we're very much so spacing people out. Masks are required and provided on campus. There are more and more places to clean your hands on every part of the campus. And as much as possible, just adhering to whatever the World Health Organization or the local governments require. So we are in person as much as possible with these times, and then often going to hybrid models if the French government or other governments, excuse me, require us to move to an online presence for a short lockdown period. So as much as possible, we are trying to maintain that in-person element, as we do understand that that is a big draw, but as doing that so as safe as possible. So we will continue going forward with this being as innovative in the next few months and years as needed. So that is the COVID-19 spiel. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. So yeah, let's talk about campuses. Let's see what there is. In the same way that you can choose between a very urban, suburban, or rural space or campus in the US, you will also find that in other parts of Europe. So all of our universities are either in this very city center, like London Met, for example. Then we have some of which are in suburban areas. So you have a very good mixture between being in the city or very close to the city, but in an area where it's a bit more residential, and you can get to enjoy a bigger campus normally. And then obviously more rural areas with beautiful scenery. Europe is beautiful, as I'm sure that many of you already have seen in photos, or many of you might have the opportunity of already traveling there. Hopefully you're able to do that in the coming years, very, very soon, crossing our fingers. But in the meantime, you can see our campuses during virtual tours. All of our websites will be provided in the next slides. So feel free to go on our websites and take a campus tour and see what I'm talking about when I mean the diversity on campuses that there is. So similar to a US university, you will find different academic buildings where normally some of which might be shared among faculties, and you'll see that, for example, law students and business students might share a classroom at different times, or there are very specialized labs for science, for art and design spaces. For example, the university that I represent is very strong in the art and design, so we have a huge building that has everything to do with fashion design studios, product design, film studios as well, TV production, radio, all of that. So in the same way that you will find those resources in the US, you'll also see that in many parts of European universities as well. So typically you'll have the libraries and other resource centers, for example, places where you can, as my colleague said before, all of the normal student needs that you'll have, you can go to one place. And especially for international students, some of us have very specialized teams to care for these international students, for example, when it comes to immigrations or visas or anything related to international students as well. We also have the student unions, which my colleagues have explained before, but they're basically students caring for students. So if you have any questions or concerns about your particular program or about the behavior of a professor, for example, there's someone that you can talk to, and their job is to basically look after you as a student. So that's very important, and that's something that European institutions provide as well. The US model of room and board might not be what you're expecting. So I'm going to talk about room and accommodation in the next slide, but I want to go back to my previous slide and talk about the eateries and pubs and coffee shops. Normally, universities in Europe do not provide students with a meal plan, but they do have kitchens where students will, or in the accommodations where students will prepare their own meals. But every university will have either restaurants or that are either on campus or very close to campus, and coffee shops and stuff like that where students would normally eat and spend a lot of time. So think about a Starbucks, for example, at the cafeteria, where you can have a sip of coffee and then continue to work on your assignments. So that's very common. And as well as gyms and fitness studios, not all of them, this is curious because I think it's funny that not all universities will provide gym and fitness studios for free, but it will be for a small fee, if not free at all. So we can move on to the next slide now. Okay, let's talk about accommodation. Fortunately, I'm going to put your mind at ease. It is not anything, it does not look like dorms. So European institutions do not like the US model of having dorms, for example. So there are 3 different ways in which international students will find accommodation. It's either on campus, off campus, or by third-party managed student housing. So typically a university will have a hall of residence that they own or they manage, and it will typically be either on campus or very close to campus. So you pay rent directly to the university. Obviously, only that university's international students will be there, and it can be a mixture between, you know, your neighbor will be either someone who's an undergraduate student as yourself, or postgraduate, or even research student. Anything can happen. So that's a model there. The important thing is that most of the student housing that I'm talking about, you have your own single bedroom, and you do not have to share a bathroom with a whole building of students. It would typically be either an ensuite facility, so you don't have to share a bathroom at all, or there are options where you share the bathroom with 2 to 3 different people, which typically would be living with you in an apartment. So you can find a wide range of options, but typically it will not be dorm-like. So the third-party managed student accommodation is similar to the model that I was just explaining, but instead of being owned and managed by the university, it's owned and managed by a third party. So you will go directly to them, and sometimes the universities will have links to them that they can provide to you at the time when you're searching for accommodation. But basically, it's a hall of residence where the good thing is that you'll be with students, of course, but they can be from other institutions, other faculties, other areas, other parts of town. So that's a very interesting way to also meet a lot of different people. And that's more popular in larger cities and more urban cities as well. And then you have the typical independent flat share or off-campus housing. Some European institutions will link particular students to host families. That's also an option. Or you can, you know, be as independent as you want and rent a room or a flat or an apartment from a landlord directly. So there are many different options, but yes, universities will typically help you find them, and they will care for where you're staying as long as you're comfortable there. So don't feel threatened or bad about going abroad. In fact, it's very welcoming, and it's a very easy process to find accommodation in any of our universities. All right, so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it means to experience the world and travel abroad, not for a short time, but actually have the experience of living and studying abroad, which I think is very useful for a world like today. So basically, it's interesting the fact that all of our institutions are in Europe, and it is so easy, guys, to travel in Europe. It's so affordable as well. It is sometimes more affordable than traveling within the United States. The distance is, you know, you can be in a whole different part of the world with different language, culture, everything in just a few hours flight. And sometimes it's even more affordable to travel outside of your host country than it is to travel within that country. And I'm talking specifically about the UK. It's sometimes easier to travel to Paris or to Switzerland, or more affordable than travel within the UK as well. So it's that accessibility to travel in different regions, and it's also a very good taste of the world. I see more and more the advantage of not so typical areas. For example, study areas such as politics or business would be more normal to hear students traveling abroad. But no, I see that more in areas like art and design, it's becoming a lot more important, especially for the workforce, to hire professionals who have had that experience. And it's interesting that you can become an ambassador of your home country and teach other international students that you'll find there about your own culture and your ways, and you become an ambassador for the United States. And then the funny thing is, when you go back to your home country, if you decide to do that immediately after you finish your program or after a while, you are now the ambassador of that host country back in the United States. And it really changes everything from your cuisine, which you now incorporate, to everything else. And it's great because you get to have a little bit of the world everywhere you go, and especially because other international students like yourself will be in that same position. So it's very easy to find friends and to become a very global citizen, as we like to say. And while I think that I can speak for all of us when I say that having studied abroad has really changed our lives, it is probably the reason why we're working in this area. We're very genuine believers in higher education abroad, and in that the importance that traveling and living and studying abroad means, especially upon your return in the US. It is very, very valued. And so I would encourage you to study abroad. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. In fact, you can ask your questions now in the chat box. But before we're done, I just wanted to ask around my colleagues in case they wanted to say anything about what is very interesting and unique about your campus or your university.
Sure. I will start, I suppose. Yeah, I just thought perhaps, you know, having the experience of especially long-term and doing your full degree abroad is very different than even doing the short-term semester. And you really become a resident there, and you become, for myself, I felt like I was a Londoner after an extended period. And so I think that's what's really cool about studying at London Met, which is the university I represent. Get that really cool on-campus experience. Like we talked about, they have such a great student union. There's so many activities for them to get involved with. They love their academics, but they also get to be a Londoner and experience that city. And that's true of whichever destination you choose. So whether it's France, whether it's Switzerland, Ireland, but for London itself, I find something kind of cool, and the student experience for our campus is kind of what happens just off campus surrounding it. So right next door is Emirates Stadium, which is the home of Arsenal Football Club, which is a Premier League soccer team. And so on game day, our students from overseas get to see, you know, a lot of the local fans come with their scarves on and they're chanting and have that cultural experience. And we're 5 minutes away on the Tube, which is the underground, to King's Cross and Pancras Station, which the students know in a pop culture way from platform 9 3/4 from Harry Potter, and it's right there. Or you can get on the Eurostar train right there across the water to mainland Europe and visit Paris or Brussels, Belgium in just a few hours. So you really get this fusion of the on-campus experience, but also that life of a Londoner. And like I said, any destination you choose, you would have that as well.
Yeah, I also enjoy the fact that because both of us are in British universities and London University specifically, I think that I can speak for both of us when I say that our campuses are very international. And I know we're in Europe and in the UK and in London, yet it feels like you're in the whole world because you see students from all over the world. So at Middlesex, for example, almost 30% of our student population is international. And I've met students or friends when I was a student from everywhere: Africa, Saudi Arabia, India. I have friends from all of the parts of the world. And it's interesting because even when you're so far apart geographically, you're so like them in so many ways that it truly makes you feel like a global citizen. So that's one of the things that I think our students enjoy the most, and it's something that I definitely enjoyed at my time at Middlesex. Julie, would you like to share a bit about your, sorry to put you on the spotlight right there, but would you like to share a bit about what being in your campus would be like?
No, absolutely. That's, I agree with both of you on what you said. That is so, it rang true for us as well. We are a very international university as well. And like, yes, you know, it is an American university, so it does have all of those American sort of features. But what I think the spirit of the university, or what you kind of feel in terms of the atmosphere, is we're a little less frat party and a little bit more dinner party in terms of like the culture. Very international student population. That's a big part of the classroom, small class sizes. So you get, you know, just, you know, 15 different perspectives from all over the world in a class size of 20 students. You might have 15, you know, countries represented. So absolutely, Gabriela, I totally agree that like after you graduate, you have friends from all over the world and you're going to weddings in 10 different countries over the next 10 different years, you know? So
it's a great professional network, right?
For sure, for sure. It's not only a, you know, a friend network, but it becomes this global professional network, 100%. Yeah. Okay. Whoever's next.
Harry, let's hear about Switzerland.
Yeah.
Well, first, I think I'd like to address the question that was posed in the Q&A box there. Thank you so much for putting that out there, Lindsay. In terms of the scope of degrees offered, it's a really interesting question, particularly because all of our institutions have a wide variety of majors and programs that are offered that you can pursue. I think the major difference between some of them would be things like having to apply directly to a major versus as an American institution declaring during your second year. So you'll have to really check each of the different institutions in terms of what is offered in order to see if what you're looking for is represented, but there is a wide variety of different major and course offerings. The other interesting difference between the sort of European style of education and that of the US is basically that in the European context, you will basically study in a 3-year degree plan, one particular field, right? And so you apply directly toward that particular area of study. Whereas the US context, you apply for admission to the institution, and then you have a little bit more flexibility in what you can do, whether that's a double major, a couple different minors, perhaps studying a language simultaneously. So that's a bit to touch on those types of things. Do y'all want to talk about the flexibility of things at your institutions?
Yeah, definitely. So at UCD, we offer, as I mentioned, direct entry or the standard 4-year undecided liberal arts degree. But I think this is a really important thing to note as well. It's a great question that when you're looking at international universities, I mean, all of us have so many great attributes that it's really worth your time to looking into the different programs and finding one that specifically fits your goals in your career. So it's really good. You can go onto the AIRR-NA website and you can find what every different university kind of specializes in, and that might help you narrow down your choice. So I know at UCD, we offer everything, and we say from A to Z, from agriculture to zoology. And there's a little bit of something for everybody, but it's definitely worth doing your research and finding the best one possible.
Harry and Bridie, tell us something cool about your campuses and the student experience there specifically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. One of the key elements of the student experience at Franklin is that of travel. I know it's been mentioned before, and it's a very common theme amongst students at international institutions, but we actually require it as a part of the academic structure of the system. So basically, one of your courses per semester is going to be and once again, this is Franklin University in Switzerland, which is an American school. So it's the same academic calendar as what you'd see in North America, right? So one of your classes per term is going to be an academic travel course, which will incorporate 2 weeks of travel to a different country to study that subject, and the costs of which are included in tuition. So basically, we are requiring our students to be global travelers and really get that cultural context for what you're studying in the classroom, that important academic element with how those things are working in the world at large. So being in Switzerland is also a really interesting place to be if you're interested in politics, business, environment, you know, lots of these different things. For example, the political element, this is the country where other countries go to settle their differences. So you get a nice little introduction to global politics in that unique capacity. So it's a bit of an introduction for the experience in Switzerland.
And one thing I really love about UCD is it is Europe's largest urban campus. So you really kind of get the best of both worlds in that you're in this great, huge multinational city, but at the same time, you have that campus community and it's very tight knit. And I mean, you could just see behind me, it's beautiful. There's so many different woodland walks and amenities on campus. We have different libraries for different disciplines. There's a sauna, there's the world's largest trampoline, one of the world's largest trampolines, an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So it's really a huge collaborative, self-sustaining community. But at the same time, you're in this huge international city where it takes you half an hour to get to the airport and you can be on a flight going anywhere in Europe, which is really great. My favorite part of the student experience at UCD would definitely be the International Society. So about 30% of our student body is international, it's non-Irish. And the International Society hosts really great cultural events for people from around the world, and you can just experience all of these different cultures together with all of your new friends. I know that they usually host a Thanksgiving party, a Super Bowl event, but you know, it's not just for Americans. We host Diwali, we host Chinese New Year, and it's a really great way to get to know people, get to know their cultures, and make friends at UCD.
Very cool. All right. Does anyone have further questions for us? If you want to type them into the chat box or, oh, sorry, I've advanced the slide backwards. There we go. Any other questions? You're welcome. Turn your mic on if you'd like and ask us, but anything related to the student experience? Otherwise, I will move on to final slides, just doing our contact information again. If you want to maybe grab a screenshot here, there's 2 slides. So we've got Franklin, London Metropolitan University, and Middlesex on this slide. And again, all of our contact information is also on the AIRR-NA website. So if you go on the AIRR-NA website, there is a member directory and we'll all be listed there as well if you missed this. And if you'd like to screenshot the next slide for Julie and Bridie. So again, and we were all representing European universities tonight, but please note our AIRR-NA network also has some other universities in Australia and Canada. So there is other options that you can explore, and we're all you know, happy to talk to you about our experiences, the different options that are out there. So please do feel free to reach out, get in touch. We're happy to talk on email, video chat, over the phone, with your parents, with someone else in your life that is a big part of the decision, because we know what a huge deal it is to move your entire life overseas. Again, it's not just that short-term study abroad semester, but you truly are moving your life and living and residing elsewhere. And so we appreciate how much that means in your own life, and it's a huge decision. So again, I just wanted to wrap up that our final AIRR-NA webinar of the year for the Wednesday series is on the 16th, and it will be specializing in the college essay, particularly for international applications. I know, you know, different countries have maybe different standards than the US college essay. For the UK, they often ask for something called a personal statement, which is quite different in what they're looking for. So definitely drop in and attend that. If you've missed Wednesday webinars and you'd like to view them, you can go on the AIRR-NA website and see our previous sessions. And even if you can't make the college essay one, but you're interested in the topic, do sign up for it and you will get emailed a recording of it afterwards. And then we will be rolling out further webinars in 2021, so please stay tuned. So does anyone else on the panel have anything to add before we...
Yes, there was a question about merit scholarships and how common they are and what percentage that they cover. So for American institutions abroad, these are very common. It's going to be the same type of application process as you do for a traditional US institution. And as a part of the review process, that does include the review for both admission and scholarship. So for Franklin specifically, the top merit scholarships can cover basically up to $25,000 US basically. However, scholarships can be very different in terms of European contexts because perhaps the tuition is not as let's just say high in some of those other institutions. So do some of you want to talk about scholarships to your institutions?
Yeah, so UCD offers pretty generous scholarships to over 80% of our international students. And these will range between €3,000 a year to 100% full ride. And so a lot of these just like for many schools, you should really go onto the websites. Again, all this information is at AIRR-NA. So you can go onto the website, find the school that you're interested in applying to, and learn more about their scholarship opportunities. If you're interested in the UCD scholarship opportunities, definitely reach out to me and I can walk you through that.
Great. Yeah. Any other final questions? Any other final thoughts from the panelists? Otherwise, all right, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We hope that you learned some new things you might not have known about the concept of doing your full degree overseas, whether that's an undergrad college experience or your postgraduate degree. Please do feel free to reach out to us and get in touch. Again, we're all listed on the AIRR-NA network. Hopefully we'll see you out on the road when we can all travel again at fairs or conferences, events across the United States. And we appreciate your time tonight.